A seismic survey along the Wild Coast was heard virtually in the Grahamstown High Court in Makhanda today. This latest application is brought by a number of coastal communities, including the Amadiba Crisis Committee. Now, let's discuss this. We are now joined via Zoom by Thandile Chinyavanhu, climate and energy campaigner at Greenpeace Africa. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Thandile.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me.
Now, let's begin here. Minister of Mineral Resources, Graham last week came out in support of Shell's seismic testing, saying that the environmental concerns are unfounded. In fact, he's also been reporting to say that communities along the West Coast who are challenging the Shell seismic survey are engaging in colonialism and apartheid of a special sort. You know, what's your reaction to that and his words?
Very concerning remarks from our minister, and definitely demonstrating that he is very much outdated in terms of the information that he has access to. Since the granting of this authorization in 2013, a large body of research has come forth and actually highlighted the impacts on the marine life that seismic activities such as this actually have. Not only that, but the argument that this is reenacting colonial sentiments is actually quite the contrary. In fact, the arguments that were heard today in which the community's cultural and spiritual traditions were undermined and ignored is actually a demonstration that this is a new form of neo-imperialism, and rather that our government is seeking to undermine and dismiss the rights as well as the hopes and of these communities.
Perhaps explain what exploration in this case exactly means.
Well, the intention is to blast the Wild Coast with these air guns that will send multiple waves into the oceans, and these will disrupt the marine life and their communications, and possibly cause a disruption in the migratory patterns of whales, fish, dolphins, and many other marine life that are in this area. This has been disputed by Shell's legal team, and in fact, it's just come down to a matter of semantics. But at the end of the day, it will be blasting waves into the oceans that will disrupt their lives as well as their reproductive and health.
So now, if this goes ahead, you've just explained the impact on the environment. Talk to me about the impact on the people along the Eastern Cape Coast. Well,
as your viewers may be familiar with the communities that have been vocal on these issues in the past, specifically the community of Ekolobeni that depended very much on ecotourism as well as fishing. So their livelihoods are derived from their direct impact, their direct relationship with the ecosystem, specifically the ocean. And the seismic activities, because they have such a dire impact on the marine life, would ultimately drive away the tourism that they benefit from because of the marine life in this area. But Advocate Mugaitobe has also gone to great strengths to explain the cultural significance of this process and how it might impact that. The fact that our ancestors reside in the ocean, and many of the traditional processes, healing rituals are done so at sea. And so the seismic activity could not only disrupt these issues, but also affect their ancestors and displease them. But this was an issue that was massively overlooked, and that might speak to a bit of a colonial mentality by Shell's legal team.
Now, Shell, in its previous reports, has indicated, you know, the kind of money it would lose if it doesn't go ahead with this particular survey, up to R1 billion or so. Talk to me about consultation. I mean, in issues such as this, one would imagine that significant consultation with the various community members would have taken place to prevent where we are currently seated now.
That is the expectation, and the legislation provides for the consultation with those that are lawfully living on the land. Unfortunately, that was not executed well. The consultation was not only extremely exclusionary, but it was limited to a few areas, specifically Mthatha, Port St. John's, as well as East London, but totally neglected the rural communities surrounding the area that are directly impacted by that. Not only that, but language was a major barrier, as well as the medium of communication. So the communications for this issue were communicated only in writing and were done so in English and Afrikaans, and not the medium of instruction or the vernacular in these particular areas. So there was a great emphasis on the fact that this was particularly exclusionary by leaving out specific community members and having a top-down approach, choosing to consult with the monarchs as opposed to communicating with the people in the community that would have a consultative process to determine whether this was the right approach or not.
In fact, Advocate Nqokaitobi argued, that very point in court, saying that, the company deliberately excluded communities and individuals who rely on the coastline for sustenance and income. But perhaps let's talk about, what this company is trying to do. Does this not go against the COP26 agreements, as an example, that were made in Glasgow to lower emissions and advance a just transition?
Definitely, this decision is against both what the agreement that was reached at the COP26 agreement, but as well as South Africa's nationally determined contributions put forward at the COP26 agreement, where they had advocated for a reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions, and had in fact committed to a lower emissions boundary, as well as the case that is currently being argued against Shell in the Netherlands, or rather which was already argued and won by the civil society organizations in the Netherlands. And that case, the judgment in that case revealed that Shell should reduce their emissions by 45% by 2030. But we're seeing the contrary from them. Instead of scaling down and rather changing their business model and moving away from the carbon-intensive business model, they're opting to increase their emissions. They're opting to ramp up their business, and that's clear by this project. Another thing that is a concern to us is that this project will not create the jobs that they're claiming that they will in the immediate. Rather, this will only come online in 10 years, and by that time, the 2030 target by which we are set to run through our carbon budget will have been reached. And at that point, it just seems moot to continue to emit carbon dioxide into the atmosphere when we've already agreed that the intention is to scale down and phase down fossil fuels.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Thandile Chinyavanhu, she's the climate and energy campaigner at Greenpeace Africa. Thank you so much for your time. Of course, she was giving us an update. A second application to interdict Shell's seismic survey along the Wild Coast was heard virtually in the Grahamstown High Court in Makhanda today. A very important story for South Africa.